On the day of the exam, the road leading to the exam center was cordoned off from quite a distance. Vehicles couldn't enter, so like all the other parents, young Zhao waited at the school gate. Other parents clustered together to chat, but young Zhao didn't know anyone. She leaned against a tree by the side of the road, smoking. Yang Jinchen had stayed in Yang Zhao's car all morning, only leaving when it was finally time to enter the exam center. Before leaving, he glanced at Yang Zhao, who encouraged him to do his best. Yang Jinchen smiled and said, "Sister, something good will happen for you." Yang Zhao was taken aback for a moment, but Yang Jinchen had already walked away. She found his words somewhat puzzling, but thinking more about it, she might understand what he meant. The few short hours. In the morning, then the afternoon. Yang Jinchen had completed the first day of the examination. During her downtime, Yang Zhao reflected and realized that Yang Jinchen didn't have any glaring weaknesses. Even Yang Zhao had to admit that Yang Jinchen was very intelligent, especially when it came to math and sciences. Despite his strong character, his thought process was rational, very calm and rational. This was something that surprised Yang Zhao as well. His parents' generation were primarily scholars who had studied abroad, so Yang Zhao and Yang Jinchen were exposed to English from an early age, so their grades couldn't be poor. The only subject Yang Jinchen didn't particularly like was Chinese. Yang Jinchen didn't enjoy dissecting texts or literary poetry, and even the prospect of writing an 800-word essay would give him a headache. So after the Chinese exam was over, Yang Zhao carefully scrutinized Yang Jinchen's expression. In the end, even Yang Jinchen couldn't help but turn his head to Yang Zhao and say, "Sister, just ask." "Huh?" Yang Zhao quickly shifted her gaze and asked, "What?" Yang Jinchen laughed, saying, "Aren't you wondering how I did on the exam?" Yang Zhao shook her head. "No, I was just thinking that now it's over, there's no point worrying about it. Just prepare for the next test." At noon, Yang Zhao asked Yang Jinchen what he wanted to eat, and after thinking for a bit he responded, "Can I choose anything?" Yang Zhao started the car and said, "Of course. I want to go to that Japanese restaurant." Yang Jinchen seemed to be in a good mood. Sitting in the back seat, leaning on the front seat, he asked, "Is that okay?" Yang Zhao was slightly surprised. "Japanese cuisine? The one we've been before," Yang Jinchen clarified. "I know, I remember." Yang Zhao pondered for a moment. The restaurant was neither too close nor too far from where they were. But she couldn't help wondering why the sudden craving. Although she asked the question, she nonetheless turned the car in the direction of the other street. Yang Jinchen laughed and said, "I am the exam sitter. I'm in charge today." Yang Zhao smiled back, "Yes, you're the boss today." There was silence in the car for a while. Yang Zhao glanced sideways nonchalantly, just in time to see Yang Jinchen looking at her. The moment his eyes met hers, he looked away. "What's wrong?" Yang Zhao asked in a calm tone. Laughing and shaking his head, Yang Jinchen said, "Nothing." The Japanese restaurant was as serene as ever, not crowded with customers. Yang Zhao and Yang Jinchen found a seat, and Yang Zhao asked him, "What do you want to eat?" Yang Jinchen said, "Anything." Yang Zhao passed the menu to him, saying, "Order whatever you feel like eating." Yang Jinchen ordered 2 plates of sushi, a serving of salmon, and 2 bottles of beverages. Yang Zhao had a small appetite, but Yang Jinchen enjoyed his meal. The lighting in the restaurant was dim, always staying that way. They sat before a long bar, and the small light above the bar made Yang Zhao's face look very pale and clean. After having his meal, there was still a long time until the next exam. "Do you want to leave?" Yang Zhao asked. "Do you want to rest for a while?" Yang Jinchen shook his head, appearing full of energy. "No need, I'm not tired at all." Yang Zhao nodded. "Then let's wait a bit more." "Sister," Yang Jinchen wiped his mouth with a napkin and then said, "Would you like to chat with me?" "Sure," Yang Zhao said. Yang Jinchen replied, "Do you know, I'm not nervous today at all." Yang Zhao laughed and said, When I took the college entrance exam, I didn't feel nervous either." She had her hand around her drink but didn't drink it. "Not being nervous is a good thing," she continued. "It means you are well prepared." She raised her head, looking at Yang Jinchen. "Jinchen, hard work pays off, and your efforts will be rewarded." Yang Jinchen looked down. After a while, he responded with a strong nod. The 2 days of examinations ended smoothly. The last subject was English. In the examination hall, more than 20 minutes before the end of the exam, many had already finished their papers. Yang Jinchen was one of them. He had finished his exam quite early, but under his teacher's instruction, he stayed in the seat until the last minute. Yang Jinchen sat by the window. He turned his head, looking outside. The weather was pleasant, with a blue sky lightly scattered with white clouds. There was a small gap in the window, and the wind from outside blew in, waving the curtain in front of Yang Jinchen's face. A few birds flew across the sky outside. Having watched them for a while, Yang Jinchen seemed to be in a trance. Suddenly, he thought of Yang Zhao, his sister. Was she waiting for him outside? Yang Jinchen felt a warmth welling up in his eyes. He couldn't articulate what Yang Zhao meant to him. Sometimes he felt his feelings for Yang Zhao were very weak, but other times it felt like she meant everything to him. She gave him hope, gave him a future. When the final bell rang, the students in the room cheered. At first, it was just a few students, then a whole class, then the entire floor, and finally, the whole school was cheering. They were released, regardless of how they performed in the exam. For these students, even if it was just for a few seconds, they were relieved, truly relieved. Even the invigilators, who were still collecting the exam papers, had understanding looks on their faces. They held back their smiles as they collected the papers, and then told the students, "You're free, go." The corridor was instantly packed with people. Yang Zhao was nestled among a sea of parents, and the crowd made her a little dizzy. But she didn't retreat. She felt she should stand at the front. She saw Yang Jinchen immediately, and Yang Jinchen quickly spotted her too. Among the crowd, Yang Jinchen, wearing a clean short-sleeved shirt and carrying a backpack over one shoulder, looked vibrant and handsome, despite his young age. Yang Zhao's hand, waving to greet him, suddenly froze. She watched Yang Jinchen's smiling face from afar and was suddenly filled with an indescribable emotion. He had become brighter. He had finally listened to her, returning to where he belonged. Yang Zhao clearly remembered that day. It was the day when Yang Jinchen's results were announced. For his college application, he had listed Beijing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics as his first choice. When Yang Zhao saw his application, she told him, "Seems like you're feeling really positive." Yang Jinchen grinned at Yang Zhao, asking, "Sister, is there a university you want me to attend?" "That's your decision," Yang Zhao replied. Yang Jinchen was not surprised by her response. He said, "Then I'll put this as my first choice." Yang Zhao asked, "Have you researched this properly beforehand?" Do you have a particular major in mind?" Yang Jinchen looked up. "Yes." "What major?" Yang Zhao asked. "Electronic Information Engineering." Yang Zhao raised her eyebrow. This major was unexpected. No one in their family had ever ventured into this field. She asked Yang Jinchen, "How did you decide on this?" Yang Jinchen shrugged, just for fun. "Do you like it?" Yang Jinchen didn't answer at first. After a while he softly replied, Yang Zhao looked up, patted Yang Jinchen's head and said, "As long as you like it." Yang Jinchen seemed a bit embarrassed. Shrinking his neck, he said, "Hey, that tickles." In the afternoon, when the school posted the results, Yang Zhao took Yang Jinchen with her. The school gate was crowded with parents and children surrounding the honor roll. With people calling and chatting around, the atmosphere was extraordinarily fiery. After getting off the car, Yang Jinchen said to Yang Zhao, "Sister, I'll go take a look, you can wait for me." Yang Zhao nodded. "All right." Instead of calling to inquire about his scores, Yang Jinchen chose to come to the school personally. He preferred this approach, enjoying its directness. Before entering the crowd, Yang Jinchen glanced at Yang Zhao, who was looking down as if to check her phone. Yang Jinchen squeezed out of the crowd and stood before the honor roll. He quickly found his name. His score was just 1 point off from his own estimate. Yang Jinchen smiled, not particularly excited, since this was a result he had expected. But he did agree with what Yang Zhao had said. The feeling of being well prepared indeed felt great. Yang Jinchen turned around, waving at Yang Zhao, raising his arm high so as to be seen by her. He wanted to share this good news with Yang Zhao as soon as possible. He could hardly wait. But slowly he realized that Yang Zhao didn't seem to look his way at all. In the thick crowd, Yang Zhao was slightly looking down. Yang Jinchen could only see her profile. Her black hair obscured her eyes, and it was clear she was on the phone. Under the clear June sky, amidst the crowd, watching Yang Zhao's silent profile, Yang Jinchen felt an unusual emotion welling up in him. He remembered what he had said to Yang Zhao before. "Sister, something good will eventually happen." It would indeed. Yang Zhao clearly remembered that day. the day when Yang Jinshan's results were announced. That day, she received a call from Wen Lei. Wen Lei's voice was very low. Their conversation was brief. Wen Lei asked her, "Is this sister-in-law?" Yang Zhao didn't recognize Wen Lei's phone number, but she sensed who it was. "You are Wen Lei." "Yes," Wen Lei replied. "Sister-in-law, are you?" Yang Zhao waited quietly for him to finish. But Wen Lei seemed unsure about the rest of the conversation. He probably thought that once Yang Zhao had answered his call, she would immediately inquire about Chen Mingsheng's situation. However, her voice was very calm. She didn't even have a question, which made Wen Lei a little nervous. After a while, Wen Lei couldn't wait anymore. He sounded somewhat anxious. "Sister-in-law, do you still care about Chen Mingsheng?" Yang Zhao was stunned. She opened her mouth but didn't respond. She felt that there were some things she couldn't clarify. "How is he doing right now?" Yang Zhao asked directly. Finally, she asked a question. Wen Lei gritted his teeth and said, if you don't care about him anymore, I won't tell you." "How is he doing now?" Yang Zhao asked again. Pressed by Yang Zhao's calm tone, Wen Lei became even more impatient. His voice became louder. He didn't address her as sister-in-law anymore and directly asked, "Do you still care about him?" He has. How can you?" Yang Zhao's hand was icy cold under the summer sun. If it was Chen Mingsheng, Yang Zhao thought if it was Chen Mingsheng, he would be able to detect her yearning, her concern from the moment she opens her mouth. Amidst Wen Lei's shouts, Yang Zhao lowered her head, softly saying, "I still care about him." "Don't be anxious, tell me what happened to him." Chen Mingsheng was in hospital. Wen Lei set the stage for a long time, but his message was succinct. "He's in the hospital. If you're willing, you can come to see him." Yang Zhao tried to control her voice. She asked, "The hospital? Is he injured?" Wen Lei paused for a while, then suddenly lowered his voice, saying urgently, "His condition is not great right now. He doesn't want you to know, but..." "I get it." Yang Zhao didn't let him say more. "Tell me, where is the hospital?" Before Yang Jinshan could tell his news, he knew something else had already occupied Yang Zhao's mind. Yang Zhao packed a suitcase as soon as she got home, and Yang Jinshan just stood by and watched her. He asked her, "Where are you going?" Yang Zhao only told him, "I have to make a trip." Yang Jinshan silently went back to his room. When he returned, he placed another suitcase in front of Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao looked at the white suitcase and then lifted her eyes to look into Yang Jinshan's. "I will go with you," Yang Jinshan said. Then he changed his phrasing, "I will accompany you." He only changed one word. But when he finished this sentence, both Yang Jinshan and Yang Zhao felt a subtle transition. Yang Jinshan had grown up. In the past, he always stood behind Yang Zhao, obeying her words, listening to her teachings, and following her steps. But now he took one step further and stood side by side with Yang Zhao. But he didn't feel like he was chasing after something. He was moving forward at his normal pace. It was Yang Zhao she had stopped moving. Yang Jinshan understood clearly who she was waiting for. Yang Zhao replied indifferently, "No need." "I will follow you regardless," Yang Jinshan insisted. Yang Zhao frowned, then Yang Jinshan said, "I am 18 years old, I am an adult." And Yang Jinshan shrugged, saying somewhat relaxedly, "I have money." His good grades in college entrance examinations finally allowed him to hold his head high in front of Zhao's parents. Yang Zhao's father gave him some money for his summer travels. Originally, Yang Jinshan had planned to visit Egypt, but he had changed his mind. "I will definitely follow you." "Because you don't know how pale your face is right now," Yang Jinshan thought silently. In the end, Yang Zhao did not continue to ignore him, but the next day she purchased 2 plane tickets. Yang Zhao reached Kunming as fast as she could, took a cab, found a hotel, and settled everything within 2 hours of landing. But when she was about to go to the hospital, her steps slowed down again. Yang Jinshan already knew what she was about to do. He asked Yang Zhao, "Are you going to see him now?" Sitting on the hotel bed, Yang Zhao looked up, her gaze slightly vacant. "Right?" Yang Jinshan said, "The driver." "His name is Chen Mingsheng," Yang Zhao said. "Are you going to see him?" "Yes," Yang Zhao said. "Let's go." Yang Zhao looked up and Yang Jinshan asked, "Is he ill or injured?" "You stay here," Yang Zhao told him. "I will accompany you to the hospital. I will wait for you at the hospital." "Don't worry, I won't disturb you," Yang Jinshan replied. In the afternoon, Yang Zhao arrived at the hospital. She called when Lei in the hospital, and he quickly found her. After a year, he looked virtually the same, only that his expression wasn't as relaxed as it was during their first meeting. His brows were slightly furrowed. He came up to Yang Zhao politely and greeted her. "Sister-in-law, you're here?" Yang Zhao nodded. After escorting her to the hospital, Yang Jinchen left as she had instructed him not to wander around and call him when she was finished. "Come with me," Wen Lei said. He led Yang Zhao to the 5th floor but didn't take her to the ward but to a corner by the staircase. There was a strong peculiar smell throughout the hospital. Seeing the medics and patients passing by, Yang Zhao asked, "How is his condition?" "Very bad," Wen Lei frowned and told Yang Zhao the truth. "Brother Sheng had an accident a week ago." "Is it serious?" Yang Zhao asked softly. Wen Lei pursed his lips and said, "There was a drug dealer, a lunatic." Thinking of Liu Wei, his eyes filled with unspeakable disgust and hatred. Before he was caught, he injected something into Brother Sheng. Yang Zhao didn't reply. Wen Lei shot her a glance and quickly added, "But we acted fast on detoxification, so..." "Is he cured?" Yang Zhao inquired. Wen Lei closed his mouth, swallowing the rest of his sentence so he didn't die on the spot. "Sister-in-law," Wen Lei's voice was a little hoarse, "Brother Sheng didn't want to inform you. He woke up once and I asked him, but he didn't allow me to say anything. He didn't want you to see him." As he spoke, Wen Lei's eyes reddened a little. "Sister-in-law, you don't know. Brother Sheng always thinks about you, even when he's working here. He's in a very bad condition now." Wen Lei looked at this somewhat indifferent and proud woman, and finally understood what old Wang meant before unknown, not the same kind. He didn't trust her, but he had no choice but to beg her. "Only you can help now, sister-in-law. Brother Sheng can only rely on you now." As Wen Lei continued to speak, he became more emotional. "We may be poor, we may not have much money, but Brother Sheng is different. He is a hero, truly, sister-in-law. You don't know, he's a hero." And now, halfway through, Wen Lei couldn't go on. He covered his face and finally shed silent tears. "Take me to see him," Yang Zhao requested. A few days ago, the sky was foggy with threads of rain, making the glaring neon lights on the Fated to Be Yours dance hall seem somewhat desolate. Over the deafening dance music and electronic sounds, Wu Jianshen stifled his anger and shouted next to the supervisor's ear, "Liu Wei, where is he?" Chen Mingsheng stood 3 steps away. Next to him was Bai Ji, who still maintained a cold face. Chen Mingsheng glanced around the somewhat outdated dance hall. The spherical lights emitting multicolored rays while rotating seemed to carry an old-fashioned air from a bygone era. The people dancing fervidly in the crowded dance floor were shaking their heads and swinging their hips as if performing a wild devilish dance. After being beaten by Bai Ji, Liu Wei had languished for some time. Chen Mingsheng knew he was nothing more than a mad stray dog. The more obedient he was to Chen Mingsheng, the more it indicated his twisted inner state. Whenever Chen Mingsheng went to the garden, Liu Wei followed. Once, when Bai Weiwei saw Liu Wei smile maliciously at her from behind Chen Mingsheng, revealing a wolf-like, white-toothed grin, she became so scared that she fell ill immediately. Bai Ji arranged for him to stay at a dance hall near the suburbs. Soon, the head waiter led Chen Mingsheng and his group to a private room. Outside the room, in the corridor, the red and green lights were eerie and dark, giving off a peculiar smell. Chen Mingsheng could recognize it, the scent of semen mixed with cheap plastic condoms. Wu Jianshen knocked on the door forcefully. The creaking of the mattress and the woman's moaning ceased abruptly. In the brief and strange silence, Chen Mingsheng saw the supervisor leaning against the wall, perspiring heavily, his legs trembling. Chen Mingsheng gave him a glance, and the supervisor, as if relieved of a heavy burden, hurriedly staggered away while using the wall for support. Bai Ji hadn't spoken a word and his gaze became even colder. Wu Jianshen and Chen Mingsheng shared a glance before Wu Jianshen picked up a fire extinguisher from nearby and violently slammed it against the door lock. "Liu Wei, have you had enough fun?" The weak, old-fashioned door was smashed open. Inside, Liu Wei knelt naked on the bed while a similarly unclothed woman lay amongst the disheveled beddings, her body still twitching intermittently. Hey, Liu Wei managed a strange laugh, his face marred with a twisted scar. One of his eyes, previously scalded with a hot pot's spicy sauce, impaired his vision. He was now looking at Chen Mingsheng and his companions with a bizarre gaze. "Brother Bai, why are you here?" Liu Wei's tone was still respectful. He climbed down from the bed and, not in the least bit panicked, put on his underwear casually. Bai Ji, remaining cold and silent, sat on a single-seat sofa next to the floor lamp, his legs crossed. His pair of white sneakers stood out conspicuously against the gaudy, ornate room, appearing exceptionally white, clean, and even stylish. Pulling out a cigarette, he lit it up. Not bad, Liu Wei. Smoke curled up from Bai Ji's nostrils, making his face even more indistinct in the dim light. Your business seems to be doing quite well. Liu Wei chuckled dryly, licking his teeth. But before he could speak, Bai Ji suddenly barked, "What time is it now? You not only eat, drink, bed and gamble, but you also have the audacity to sell ecstasy right in the dance hall." After Liu Wei finished dressing and wiped his mouth, he replied, "Brother Bai, I have it under control." "You don't have shit under control." Bai Ji, remembering the previous incident triggered by Liu Wei's loose lips, became increasingly infuriated as he looked at the woman on the bed. Grabbing an empty beer bottle from the table next to him, he swung it towards Liu Wei's head. "Brother Bai," Chen Mingsheng stuck his cigarette in his mouth, quickly blocking Bai Ji's impending blow. He nudged his chin towards the bed. "Brother Bai, I've checked this woman. She's clean." Liu Wei shifted his gaze to Chen Mingsheng. Because of his disfigured face, his expressive glance towards Chen Mingsheng was unclear, seemingly like he was smiling. But soon he turned back, and displayed on his open right palm was a micro-syringe. "Brother Bai, we have tested it. This batch from Hydra is undoubtedly the real thing." Bai Ji's hand slowly fell back. Chen Mingsheng flicked away some smoke, his brows furrowed slightly as he looked at the woman on the bed, her eyes tightly shut, still in a state of unconsciousness. Her expressions were of blissful agony. He had noted clearly as soon as he entered the room that the woman's skin was fair all over, showing no blue spots common in heroin overdoses. What could that indicate? It indicated that the dosing Liu Wei made was just right. What did the precision of Liu Wei's dosing mean? It meant the purity of the drug from that Burmese dealer was exactly as stated. This batch was a task Chen Mingsheng had voluntarily undertaken. For the first transaction with Hydra, Bai Ji was very cautious. The quantity was not substantial. It was less than 50 grams of a sample, which wasn't even enough for a death sentence. To cast a broad net over drug dealers from both sides, Chen Mingsheng suggested Lao Zhu to deal with this transaction in a relaxed manner. He had also tested the product. It was white, softer than pearl powder. He got a bit of it on his fingertip, rubbed it on his arm, and watched it melt into the pores and disappear in the blink of an eye. Only a batch of goods like this could encourage Bai Ji to make a firm decision and do this big deal. "Brother Bai, with this level of purity, if we hand it over to the north, it's at least 4,500 to 5,000 per gram. If we add a little more limed caffeine." Liu Wei's eyes were bloodshot from intense desires, twinkling with a brutal and zealous light. "Hey," Bai Ji suddenly chuckled, flicking away cigarette ash, seemingly musing. "Mark said that if you can make 50% profit, you will risk breaking the law. For 100% profit, you will trample all laws of society. And for 300%, you will dare to commit any crime, even at the risk of the gallows. How much profit are we talking about here?" Bai Ji dressed like an intellectual and spoke like one too. Chen Mingsheng knew what Bai Ji was most proud of was that during his time in prison, to relieve the void in his mental life, he finished reading Marx's Capital. After being released, he had a complete change. Liu Wei stood up and said viciously, "Brother Bai, give me another chance." Bai Ji's gaze turned to Chen Mingsheng. Chen Mingsheng didn't speak. He was smoking leisurely, his eyes calm and bright. Wu Jianshen said, "Brother Bai, let me go." Bai Ji was smoking fiercely, and the cigarette soon burned down to a stub. After exhaling the last puff of smoke, he firmly extinguished the cigarette. "But in the ashtray, I'll take this trip." Perhaps several consecutive failures in large-scale transactions had pricked Bai Ji, or maybe it was his innate suspicion, but this time Bai Ji was determined to personally accomplish this big deal. He even avoided people around him, individually contacting Hydra. Chen Mingsheng wasn't getting any news, causing him to feel anxious, but he could endure and be patient now. Bai Ji handed him a passport, a set of keys, and a credit card imprinted with the emblem of the bald eagle and the stars and stripes. "I have sent Wei to America. Once this deal is done, you can follow." On the brand new passport was a picture of him before he had lost his right leg. The face remained the same, just younger and smiling. Bai Ji patted his shoulder, saying, "This leg I owe you. You can enjoy your life afterwards. I'm getting older, you take care of Wei, and I can rest assured." Chen Mingsheng abruptly looked up. After I make enough money, I will go there to retire. Brother Bai, are you really going there yourself this time? Chen Mingsheng held the card, asking tentatively. Bai Ji nodded. Looking at Chen Mingsheng, his face was serious. You guys should follow too. Pack your things, set off tomorrow with Guozi, bring the right equipment, and no mobile phones are allowed. How do we communicate? Meet at the Mangshi bus station at 10:30. Mangshi, the seat of Dihong Prefecture, is close to Myanmar. Chen Mingsheng had scaled up the ranks under Baiji from Minkin's clutches. He knew best of how cautious and cunning Baiji himself was. When Baiji said to meet in Mangshi, it didn't necessarily mean the transaction would also take place in Mangshi. Baiji must have already decided to transact in Dihong Prefecture, which borders Myanmar. But with vast mountains in Dihong Prefecture, where exactly would Baiji choose as the location? No mobile phones were allowed. In fact, many places in Dihong Prefecture still didn't have fully set up communication base stations. Even if you had a mobile phone, the signal would be very weak. How would they inform Lao Zu about the specific time and address of the transaction? Chen Mingsheng was mulling over it alone in his room. He felt somewhat anxious and also somewhat anticipated. Because Baiji said this would be the last time. The last time. As it approached the wee hours of the night, Chen Mingsheng had a call with Lao Zu and still could not come up with a better solution. He sat on the bed, tossed his phone aside, and kicked the table next to him with a foot. The string of keys Baiji had given him, along with the passport and credit card, clattered onto the floor. Human memory is a remarkable thing. It's a mixture of sounds, images, smells, sensations, and everything else. Any form of repeated stimulus has the potential to awaken an entire dormant scenario. The crisp clinking sound of the keys stirred something in Chen Mingsheng, making him pause. Yang Zhao's cool and clean face surfaced in his mind, her snow-white, slender neck visible from her coat. She took out a set of keys and placed them in his hand. Wait for me at home. The password lock for the front door is 4763. 4763. J4763. Chen Mingsheng suddenly laughed. Yang Zhao. He redialed Lao Zu's number. Yana 8118. Keep an eye on Yana 8118 at all checkpoints, it's a Lexus SUV. Lao Zu asked, what? Chen Mingsheng, who had become extremely certain by then, said clearly, Baiji's lifesaver car, armored and bulletproofed. He will undoubtedly drive this for the transaction with Hydra. They may change the license plate later, just keep a close watch. Wherever the car is, that's where Baiji's transaction will be. Mangshi. Ruili. Longquan. Yingjiang. Baiji led a team including Chen Mingsheng almost guerrilla style along the borderline of Dihong Prefecture. Everyone was extremely vigilant. Especially Liu Wei. Whenever Chen Mingsheng caught his eye, he could see an unusual ruthlessness. Chen Mingsheng felt that Liu Wei was treating this operation as his chance to turn the tables. Hydra was also very shrewd. Both sides knew there could be no mistake with this batch of goods, so they were all extremely cautious. Once in Mangbang they were about to start the transaction, Baiji somehow sensed a hint of danger, and the people from both sides soon dispersed. Half a month later, they arranged to meet in Yingjiang. Chen Mingsheng knew that the most difficult part was for Lao Zu and his brothers who had been trailing all the way. After learning from the ordeal in Mangbang, they dared not act rashly. Sometimes, when Baiji entered a small town, he asked if there were any outsiders there. Chen guessed that Lao Zu and his group were having meals in the open air and sleeping rough, which was common. But when it came to drug enforcement, when was it ever easy? There was no comfort. No end. They could only push forth fearlessly. Each time a drug dealer surfaced, they captured one. If another appeared, they captured another. It was the 14th of the month. The moon was especially large, paper thin. It hung in the sky like a paper cutout, quiet and cold. Chen Mingsheng was crouched in the bushes, an unusual tranquility in his heart. Through the scope, he saw Liu Wei, Wu Jianshen, and Guozi already exchanging goods and dollars with Hydra's people. Baiji was not in the sight range. His leg was bad, making it inconvenient for him to participate in the transaction directly, so he served as the role of sniper and guard. Hydra had its armed forces as well. Who knew how many hidden threats lay beneath the quiet of the Bainan Mountains Pass? Chen Mingsheng was waiting. Many others were waiting as well. Lao Zu had told him that this year they had started international drug enforcement cooperation with Myanmar and established 3 border liaison offices in Ruili, Tenkeng, and Nanzan. This operation was their first cooperation with the Myanmar police in Dihong Prefecture. The higher-ups instructed that they must catch all in one swoop and set up a benchmark. The mountain forest was quiet, the moonlight like water. Only the transaction at the Bainan Mountains Pass was proceeding methodically. In drug enforcement, it's inevitable to use entrapment. Unless the goods change hands, no crime can be determined. Chen Mingsheng felt mixed emotions. He was nervous, but within that tension, there was a hint of tranquility. Everything would end on the 14th. The 15th would bring reunion. He had a home now. A woman was waiting for him at home. The money and goods exchanged hands. Liu Wei and the others each picked up a box and hurriedly left. Suddenly, a gunshot sounded from the Myanmar side, and amidst Hydra's gang, one man fell to the ground. Damn it! Retreat fast. Liu Wei and his men started to run. Almost immediately, a barrage of gunshots began. Hydra's armed forces went into shooting frenzy to cover the retreat. Someone was frantically shouting, "Drop the goods! Drop them! Drop your mother!" Guozi roared angrily. Amid the chaotic gunfire, his left leg buckled, and he fell to his knees, screaming in pain. Wu Jianshen, who had already run ahead with the goods, spat in contempt, turning back to help Guozi. His entire back was exposed in Chen Mingsheng's line of sight. Chen Mingsheng's eyes were pitch black, coldly and steadily pulling back the gun bolt, his finger pressing on the trigger. "You know me. Ever since my wife gave birth to our child, I began to value my life." The sharp crosshair was aligned with Wu Jianshen's knee. He pulled the trigger. Amid the hail of bullets, a jet-black Lexus charged out like a fortress, aiming for the 2 boxes of goods dumped by Guozi and Wu Jianshen. A black gun barrel poked out the car window, firing relentlessly. "Fugitives! Brother Ming, cover me!" Liu Wei shouted as he charged towards Chen Mingsheng's location, with the box guarding his front. Not far behind Chen Mingsheng was another car. This was the pre-planned retreat strategy. Liu Wei was strong and fast. As he rushed toward Chen Mingsheng's position, Chen Mingsheng was about to turn and sit up, but suddenly felt something was off. That unease originated from his experience, like a thin spider's thread quivering gently made him turn his head again. Liu Wei. From the start, Liu Wei had never taken his eyes off him. His distorted face gradually unveiled a gruesome smile. Chen Mingsheng reflexively reached for his gun, but it was already too late. Liu Wei sneered, laughing heartily. "Brother Ming! Brother Ming!" Chen Mingsheng hadn't expected at all that Liu Wei's hatred for him ran so deep in his marrow that when he was on the brink of desperation, he wouldn't first think of escaping but seek revenge on him. Liu Wei had become frenzied, his legs pressing Chen Mingsheng hard onto the ground. Chen Mingsheng fought back vigorously, his arm muscles bulging. "Liu Wei, the cops are here. Have you gone fucking mad?" Liu Wei chuckled, his scarred face grotesquely terrifying. "Brother Ming, I have legs, I can run." "But you can't, ha. Baiji's Lexus grabbed those 2 boxes and prepared to retreat. Someone rolled down the window and shouted, "Liu Wei, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of there." Seizing the moment as Liu Wei was distracted, Chen Mingsheng landed a hook punch in Liu Wei's stomach. That punch was full of power, making Liu Wei grunt and loosen his grip. Chen Mingsheng swiftly rolled over, pinning Liu Wei underneath him. He gripped Liu Wei's neck, and the 2 of them tangled again. Liu Wei's face turned a liverish color as it was choked. He flailed wildly. Strangely, there wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. He gasped with his mouth open, spittle splashing onto Chen Mingsheng's face. Liu Wei's strength seemed to wane for a moment. Chen Mingsheng's leg wouldn't hold for too long. He wanted a quick resolution and raised his fist to strike hard at Liu Wei's nasal bone. The fragile nasal bone under his fist instantly deformed. Liu Wei's face turned to one side, blood spurting from his nostrils and mouth. Chen Mingsheng planned to subdue him immediately, but suddenly felt a stinging pain in his thigh. Chen Mingsheng slightly paused as an unprecedented, intense chill burst from his groin, storming his entire body like a flash of lightning. His fingertips trembled violently, his scalp tingling. In that instant, his extensive experience in the drug field gave him an intuition. Liu Wei had injected him with heroin. No wonder his strength had waned earlier. He was searching for a spot, a precise spot. It only takes 20 seconds for blood to circulate once around the human body. A high-purity heroin solution entered Chen Mingsheng's femoral vein, instantly reaching his heart, his brain, his central nervous system. He had no extra time to think. With his remaining consciousness, he spread his arms and legs, and held Liu Wei tightly. Chen Mingsheng's eyes stared straight at the horizon. Under the icy pale moonlight were the shadows of drifting snow. The snow floated and floated, then started to ignite. Liu Wei's fists wildly beat against his face, chest, and stomach. "Fuck you, son of a bitch. Fuck your mom." Liu Wei tried hard to pry Chen Mingsheng's fingers, finally freeing his leg. He crudely kicked Chen Mingsheng's head, picked up the box, and ran towards the car. As he opened the car door, a bullet accurately pierced his heart. "Brother Ming, damn it, don't move. Naloxone for detoxification. This is our man. Our man. Hurry up. You guys, go reinforce Team 2, surround by Ji's car." The gunfire was chaotic. The smell of blood was heavy. Shadows intertwined, cries rose and fell. None of it had anything to do with Chen Mingsheng anymore. His pupils were extremely contracted, his skin turning purple. He stared at the cold moon in the distance, his lips parting, then closing. Again parting, then closing. All the scenes became chaotic. They were like a drop of ink falling into clear water, scattering in an instant, the smoke growing bigger and bigger, then suddenly twisting together and exploding all at once. Within that deepest burst, in the deepest part of all motion, there was a faint, still image. In the deserted backyard of a temple, there was a woman praying with her head lowered. The moon on the 14th was almost full, not quite. The detoxification was administered in time, but damage could not be avoided, and it was deep in the marrow. Chen Mingsheng was placed in a single room, and when Yang Zhao opened the door, he was resting. When Lei whispered to her, "His mental state is not good, he often falls into a coma." "I'll stay with him for a while," Yang Zhao said. When Lei nodded and quietly closed the door, he leaned against the door, as though all his strength had drained away. He still remembered the scene of resuscitating Chen Mingsheng that day. Old Zhu was like a madman, yelling in the hospital, even running off without realizing he had lost a shoe. It was a pitch-black night, darker than anything. Outside the resuscitation room, there was a row of chairs, but no one sat. Old Zhu was pounding the wall outside the ward, hammering with a sound like muffled thunder. When doctors and nurses from the hospital came out and saw a row of people in dirty clothes, they tried to stop him. Old Zhu squatted at the door, holding his face, his hands shaking. For people came to the hospital. Apart from Old Zhu and Wen Lei, there was another person who came with them. Wen Lei didn't stay at the scene. He made an excuse to go to the bathroom. He remembered Chen Mingsheng's face, remembered his tightly gripping hand. His expression was already a bit loose by then, but he was still telling them, "Catch them." Wen Lei cried like a fool in the bathroom. Such high-purity drugs, directly injected in a large dose, left Chen Mingsheng's fate hanging in balance. Moreover, even if he were resuscitated, such a strong overdose would leave indelible damage to his body. Many unforeseen after-effects are likely to accompany him for life. A lifetime. When Lei thought of Chen Mingsheng, the last thing he thought of was not his heroic deeds, but that day, that winter day, Chen Mingsheng and he were in that small booth. He was smoking next to him. Then he snatched the computer from his hand, opened the desktop weather system, and found Yangzhou City. And then he just stared at that tiny snowflake, silent. When Lei turned the faucet water to maximum to drown out his sobs, Yang Zhao came to Chen Mingsheng's bedside. "How many months has it been?" Yang Zhao asked herself, and asked him too. She didn't immediately think of an answer, but it didn't matter. She had a long time. She could sit down and slowly think. It seemed to be less than half a year, 4 months, 5 months. But why did you turn out like this? Chen Mingsheng's hand was exposed. Yang Zhao watched for a while. She slowly raised her arm and took his hand. His hand was still wide, big, but it was no longer strong. Chen Mingsheng had lost a lot of weight. His face looked terrible, very terrible. He still had thick gauze wrapped around his head, and his face was also marked with injuries. His hair had grown a bit longer, covering his eyebrows. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and his mouth was a little cracked. Suddenly, Chen Mingsheng's hand moved. Yang Zhao was anxious. She thought he had awakened. Later she realized that was just his unconscious twitching. She soon found out that there were many such twitches. Yang Zhao didn't know how long she had been sitting. Chen Mingsheng's hand twitched. Yang Zhao raised her other hand and firmly enveloped his hand inside. But this time he really was awake. He opened his eyes, not fully opened, like a weary bird, as if he was about to close his eyes again. But in his last moment he saw Yang Zhao. His gaze slowly moved to her. He kept looking at her. Finally, he recognized her and realized this was not an illusion, not a dream. This was real, the real her. Suddenly, Chen Mingsheng's lips trembled. His hands seemed to want to exert force, but he failed to grasp her. He was still very weak. Yang Zhao lowered her head, her hair strands hanging beside Chen Mingsheng's face. Outside the window was a large piece of fiery sky. Yang Zhao gently said, "Chen Mingsheng, I came to see you." Chen Mingsheng closed his eyes, his teeth clenched. "Is it Wenlei?" His voice barely palpable. Yang Zhao stood straight. "Do you blame him?" Chen Mingsheng's mouth seemed to move. Yang Zhao felt he seemed to want to smile, but it was not visible. Chen Mingsheng shook his head. "No, don't blame." Yang Zhao still held his hand. She said, "Are you tired? Rest." Chen Mingsheng said, "Where are you living?" Yang Zhao said, "I naturally have a place to live. You don't need to worry about me." As Yang Zhao was talking, Chen Mingsheng's hand twitched again. Yang Zhao paused and said, "You take good care of your health." Chen Mingsheng was silent. The door opened. Yang Zhao looked over. Wenlei had brought a doctor with him. "Sister-in-law, the doctor is here for an examination." Yang Zhao nodded and made room. While the doctor was examining Chen Mingsheng, Yang Zhao and Wenlei were waiting outside. Yang Zhao asked, "How long will the examination take?" Wenlei said, "About 10 minutes or so, it's quick." Yang Zhao nodded and said, "Come with me for a moment." Yang Zhao and Wenlei went downstairs. The sky was already dark. Yang Zhao stood under the street light and lit a cigarette. "Have you spoken to Brother Sheng?" Wenlei asked. Yang Zhao said, "How is his condition?" "I sat next to him. His hand is always trembling, twitching." "Yes." Wenlei tried to make it sound as casual as possible. "Just a minor problem, no effect really." Yang Zhao raised her eyes and looked directly at Wenlei. Wenlei couldn't help but look away from her deep black eyes. "Don't lie to me," Yang Zhao said. "If you don't tell me, I'll ask the doctor." Wenlei gritted his teeth and said, "Heroin overdose. He's not completely okay yet. There may be such reactions." He carefully watched Yang Zhao, observing her expression. Then he found that during his conversation, Yang Zhao didn't even blink. Wenlei quickly said, "But he will be okay, really, sister-in-law. It doesn't affect his life at all, not at all." "Is it because of the nerves?" Yang Zhao suddenly said. Wenlei silenced. Yang Zhao said, "Drug overdoses should cause trauma to the nervous system." "Sister-in-law." Wenlei's voice faltered. "You?" Yang Zhao looked at him. "What about me?" "You." Wenlei struggled to say, "You should not despise Brother Sheng. Really, don't despise him." "That's right. He has money now. He can give you a good life too." Wenlei seemed a little uncertain about Yang Zhao. He took a step forward in panic, getting closer to Yang Zhao. He whispered, "Sister-in-law, Brother Sheng has left some money." "I'm not lying to you. He left it for you. He can give you a good life too, so." He clenched his fist, said, "Don't despise him. You stay by his side. Stay, okay?" After listening to his rapid words, Yang Zhao slowly raised her head. She didn't look at Wenlei. She directly looked past him, towards the descending night sky. She felt a deep exhaustion. The cigarette was burned down. Yang Zhao stubbed out the cigarette and threw it into the trash can. She said softly, "Let's go back." After the doctor finished examining Chen Mingsheng, the nurse came in to change his medicine. Chen Mingsheng's head was severely wounded. When the gauze was removed, Yang Zhao saw 5 or 6 stitches on his forehead. The wound was twisted like a centipede. Chen Mingsheng was still very weak now. He couldn't do anything. The nurse even helped him to urinate. Yang Zhao was watching on the side. He was like a fragile statue. A slight carelessness could shatter him into pieces. When everything was done and only Chen Mingsheng and Yang Zhao were left in the room, Yang Zhao came to the bedside. She found he was awake. He was looking at her. Only his eyes were the same as before. No, not exactly the same anymore. His eyes were deeper, more profound, more silent than before. Yang Zhao sat next to him and took his hand. Chen Mingsheng's lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he still didn't make a sound. There seemed to be thousands of words in his gaze, but in the end, it returned to calm. Yang Zhao lowered her head and said softly, "Chen Mingsheng, this is not what you told me." Chen Mingsheng's gaze turned more painful. He opened his mouth. There was no sound, but Yang Zhao understood. He was saying sorry. "Sorry, Yang Zhao. Sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" Yang Zhao's hand tightened slightly. her expression still calm. "It's not your fault, it's just your choice," she murmured. "Just your choice." Chen Mingsheng's hand responded to her, subtle and slow. Yang Zhao stared into his eyes. She suddenly realized that she understood the meaning in his gaze. He was scared. This fear came from many sources, both known and unknown. And this feeling, summed up by him, was finally twisted into a long rope called farewell, strangling his neck. Yang Zhao raised her hand and gently caressed his face. Chen Mingsheng savored this feeling, his face imperceptibly leaning towards her hand. Yang Zhao felt it and slowly smiled. She jokingly said to Chen Mingsheng, even though I've said it many times before, I need to say it again. She slowly leaned towards Chen Mingsheng. She smelled the pungent scent of the medicine. In that scent, she said to Chen Mingsheng, "You really are a jerk." This time, she saw clearly. The corner of his mouth indeed curved. He looked at her. There was still a trace of uncertainty in his eyes, but the fear and terror were much less. He always wanted to lift her up, a feeling he had never experienced before. He wanted to lift this woman up, he wanted to truly possess her. But in the end, he found out it was this woman who carried him. Even though the time was extremely short, the power she gave him was indescribable. She was not kind or gentle, but she saved him on that rainy night with something else that's more prominent and sharp. Although nobody knew, nobody cared. Chen Mingsheng tightly gripped his hand, but his hand twitched violently and he couldn't exert his strength. But their hands remained tightly clasped together. Her hand was very dry, just like her, cool and indifferent. Only under one condition will you understand her passionate soul, that is when you both open your hearts. People like Chen Mingsheng who seem indestructible are actually just soft buns wrapped in a hard shell. Any wavering, any bewilderment will hold him back. Only the most truthful, direct, and naked individuals can pull him out of that dark and quiet corner. She saved him on that rainy night, with her own self. Even though no one knew, no one cared. That day, Yang Zhao stayed with Chen Mingsheng until he fell asleep. It wasn't too late. Chen Mingsheng was resting at around 7 or 8 in the evening. Yang Zhao left the ward and found that Wen Lei was no longer there, replaced by someone she didn't know. Presumably Wen Lei should have explained Yang Zhao's identity. When the man saw Yang Zhao coming out of the ward, he looked at her, then nodded and said, "Hello, I'm here to take care of Chen Mingsheng. Zhao Lei has gone to change shifts." He looked a little older than Wen Lei, not tall, of medium build, wearing a regular half-sleeved shirt and shorts. Yang Zhao nodded and said, "All right, then I'll leave it to you." After speaking, she asked him, "Does he need 24-hour care now?" The man answered, "Yes, the people in the team also care a lot. This time he made a great contribution. We all owe it to him that we were able to wipe out Baiji's gang. There can't be anything wrong with him. We will definitely save him with all our might." Yang Zhao said quietly, "Thank you." When she walked to the doorway downstairs and was stopped, Yang Zhao suddenly realized that she had completely forgotten about Yang Jinchen. She felt a bit guilty. Yang Jinchen was sitting on a bench on the first floor, watching as Yang Zhao passed by him without a glance. He called out "Sister," but Yang Zhao didn't respond. When Yang Jinchen called her by her name, Yang Zhao, she finally stopped. "Chao Tian." Yang Zhao hurried over and ruffled her hair, saying, "I'm sorry I stayed too late. I know." Yang Jinchen didn't seem angry or impatient at having to wait for a long time. He stood up and picked up a plastic bag from the bench beside him. Yang Zhao looked at it. Yang Jinchen said, "It's food. You must not have had anything to eat yet." Indeed, Yang Zhao hadn't eaten anything. "I don't have much of an appetite, you eat it," Yang Zhao said. "You're coming back tomorrow, right? If you don't eat anything, your resistance will go down. This is a hospital. It's safe, but it can also be dangerous. Also, if you don't eat anything, you won't have the energy to take care of anyone, right?" Yang Zhao suddenly looked up at him. Yang Jinchen was straightforward, not caring at all. His role has changed, Yang Zhao thought. He has changed, he has grown up. "All right," she said. "Take it back to the hotel. I'll eat there," Yang Zhao said and started walking outside. Yang Jinchen followed her. When Yang Zhao got to the parking lot, she took out her keys and asked casually, "What did you buy?" "Sweet and sour ribs," Yang Jinchen said. "You love eating them." Yang Zhao suddenly froze. Her key-holding hand also stopped. She seemed stunned by the impact of some fragmentary memory. "What's wrong?" Yang Jinchen asked. Yang Zhao looked into her brother's eyes. His gaze was clear in the night, filled with deep concern. This concern was only for her. But it inevitably touched on other things, another person. Yang Zhao realized that brief and mundane period of time has also lingered for so long. So long that like quicksand, it seeped bit by bit into her broad heart. Nothing, let's go,